All right, Matthew Brown has dropped more bombs in part 3 of his interview with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, and we're going to be looking at that today and talking about the quotes. But for me, it's not specifically the things that he said, but the things that he didn't say when you sort of read between the lines and connect the dots. That is what interests me the most, and we're going to talk about that as well. So we've got a few clips that we're going to get through today, but just before we do, we have a very quick yet important update that we have to go through. So if everybody at home could please take out their Bibles, and if we could open up to page 19, which is Crowley, verse 7. As you can see, we have already collected our first full page of conspiracy guidelines here on YouTube. And honestly, it's been an honor to receive this kind of valor and this recognition. But today, we add yet another addition to our unhinged Pokedex, and that is a personal favorite of mine. That is the search for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. And I think after 2.5 hours with Ashton Forbes over the weekend, we knew this one was coming. And it's filling up quickly. And I have to say, I'm excited to see what comes next because I don't know what Wikipedia guidelines are out there. I'm just kind of collecting them as they come. But I feel like we're starting to get to a point where I can't quite think about what other ones would be left. But that's half the fun, is the surprise. My name's Josh, by the way. Welcome to Polarity. With all of those formalities out of the way, let's get straight into today's clips.
Thought it was okay to move forward with that story and then try to talk to House with the full details in the meantime before that story came out. It takes time to vet things. He has to look into me, just find out who I am, look into the details of what I'm alleging.
I know the George and I know the process well.
So it takes months, so I got some time. And in that time, I, for the first time, get connected with David Grush.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very enlightening conversation with him. And at his suggestion, he connected me with you. And that is how we came to meet.
Yeah. And I'm looking not to report on what you're saying initially.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking to help you achieve the goal that we're all fighting for, which is getting the people asking for it, the information. This doesn't have to be public. It doesn't have to be a public display. This is, let's facilitate these conversations. That's where we started. I'm not really doing journalism work with you. I'm trying to just help the process go. That's how, that was my headspace.
Yeah, I was asking Gresh, I'm having a real hard time, A, meeting members themselves, and B, just even talking to anybody in house. Who's the guy to go to? And it was you.
Okay.
So, that was the nature of our meeting.
Okay, so this is the first part where straight away, what came to my mind was Matthew Brown spoke to David Grush, and David Grush directed Matthew Brown to go speak to Jeremy Corbell. He said, David said, you're the guy. But David Grush came out through NewsNation and Ross Coulthart. Why would he not recommend them? That's who he went with, but he has recommended someone else. To me, that says something's gone wrong there. To me, that says perhaps David Grush regrets speaking to NewsNation, regrets speaking to Ross Coulthart. I don't know why, but why wouldn't David Grush recommend going through the same channel that he went through? The only reason you could assume is that maybe he's found something out, maybe things have changed. I don't know. But that's the first, that's all I got from that clip, is that David Grush recommended that Matthew Brown go speak to people that he didn't speak to. To me, that says something about NewsNation, and we're going to get into more of that. But I think something we should probably start to consider, as you should with anything in this space, is NewsNation controlled? I mean, they are essentially the forefront of UAP news. Why are they allowed to be? I could be tinfoiling here, but I think it's important to think about, especially as we listen to more of these clips.
So the Russian military, from 78 to 88, they had a standing order for every unit in this vast Soviet military empire, any UFO or ball of light, flying saucer, anything weird in the sky, it had to all be investigated. And the guy who was in charge of that program at the Ministry of Defense said that there had been several dozen instances where they sent warplanes, to intercept these UFOs, and they couldn't keep up with them. They just poof, they're gone. But in 3 cases, they tried to engage and shoot them down. 3 cases where those planes, the Russian warplanes, crashed. 2 of the pilots died, and after the second pilot died, they issued an order, leave them alone. Because in the words of the commander of the Russian Air Force, they said they have incredible capacities for retaliation.
Why so many shapes? Why do you think so many shapes? I used to think flying saucers were discs. I used to think UFOs were flying saucers. That's what I used to think. Now, after knowing this guy for so long, reading all the reports, getting whistleblowers, talking with him, why so many shapes?
I think part of it's sometimes these might be, made to purpose. So, if they're only making it for a specific use case scenario, they'll design it to excel in that mission.
I guess we do that. We do that.
Absolutely.
We have bombers that look a certain way, and then we have reconnaissance vehicles that look another way. I guess.
Star Wars, they have giant cruisers, and they have the X-fighters, for different jobs.
So this quote here, that some of these UAPs, USOs, whatever, are made to purpose. Now, recently, I read through a 4chan leak, which kind of felt like almost a part 2, in a way, to the original famous 4chan leak that covered a lot, but I think the central part of it was the fact that there is this thing that gets referred to as the MCU, the Mobile Construction Unit, which is this giant facility that seems to maneuver and move around the Atlantic Ocean. And it seems to be where these UFOs are coming from and going back to. And in that original 4chan thread, the person who was talking about it said that it seems like these UFOs, the ones that they've crashed and the ones that they've analyzed, are purpose-built, whether they're made to be like a weapon, whether they're made to be a laboratory, whether they're made to go and surveil. It seems like whatever they are, whatever shape they are, has a purpose associated with it. And once they serve their purpose, they go back to this mobile construction unit and are essentially recycled and sent out again. And if you watch that video, that kind of lines up with the idea that, well, as Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp just said then, the Russians believed that these, whatever this was, had extraordinary abilities to retaliate. And part of this story, as you can see there in the headline, is that the people or the crafts of ours that have gotten too close to this MCU have just kind of been vaporized, like gone before you could even report that you're in trouble. That's the story that we hear. And to me, this all lines up. This all tracks with what we've heard on 4chan and what seems to be coming out through Matthew Brown. Now let's move into the next clip where Matthew begins to call out the mainstream media. And I really love this clip. Check this out.
If we are so certain they are friendly, why is this a secret?
I have one more.
Yeah.
Drones. So 60 Minutes just did a big piece on drones. Langley Air Force Base had these things flying over it for 17 nights in a row, stayed in New Jersey for weeks at a time, sensitive bases, restricted airspace at US, UK bases in Britain for days and days. We can't track these things coming in. We can't track them when they leave. We can't shoot them down. We don't know where they're from. But don't worry, they're just drones. They're foreign surveillance drones. Give me your take on that whole situation.
Well, if you're a member of the public and you are still listening to CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, or reading the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, all of that is controlled. It's propaganda. It is shaping your life narrative.
Wake up to yourself. Sorry.
Intentionally so. As for the government reactions to that, I was very disappointed to see a continuation of the dismissal of these events by the Trump administration's press secretary. I can guess why they decided, despite the campaign promise to immediately address that issue, to not. Has to do with geopolitical situations we are currently involved in, and the fact that we are living through a constitutional crisis related to this issue.
Just seems to me that it is a worse thing to say these might be foreign surveillance drones, and there's not a damn thing we can do about it. We can't track them, we can't see them, we can't shoot them down. Than it is to say these are genuine unknowns, It seems like they're unknowns, not just some drone that the Chinese are floating off of New Jersey.
Well, there's an infection in our security thinking, which is that, they're primicists. They must be on top. To admit weakness is to admit defeat. And to say you don't know what something is a pretty big signal of weakness. There's not much humility and a lot of arrogance driving, I think, these responses more so than any strategy.
Okay, so there's a lot to get into from that clip there. First of all, like Matthew Brown said, if you still watch mainstream news, wake up to yourself. Seriously. Like, you are literally programmed. Your mind is programmed. Like, you literally live in the Truman Show. And that's the clip that I'm going to show you in a second. But if you are getting your news and relying on these kind of outlets every single day to ingest information about what is going on around you, you're not just getting information, you're getting curated information that is not only deliberately chosen, but also has a twist on it to make sure you interpret that information in the way that they want you to. I mean, you should know this by now. Seriously, like, it's ridiculous that so many that these kind of outlets even still have any weight and power to them, which unfortunately they still do because people just seem to have their head in the sand. But look at this clip. This is a classic example of what the mainstream news is.
Good morning. Yeah, I know. Oh.
Here's a news flash just in. An aircraft in trouble began shedding parts as it flew over Sea Haven just a few moments ago.
Oh.
Wow. Luckily no one was hurt. But hey, how do you feel today?
There you go. Little news flash. Oh, don't worry about that. It's just a plane breaking up. Anyway, get on with your day. Move along now. And I just noticed as well on that light, if you haven't seen the Truman Show, by the way, just quickly, basically he lives in a movie. His whole world is a lie. And that is essentially what not only I believe, but what Matthew Brown is telling us as well. But another little Easter egg is the label on that light was, I think it said like Sirius or something, which, we're told about that being another star system and whatever. I don't know, just a little Easter egg I picked up on there. But that is a classic example of how easily people are manipulated about things that are going on through the news. Okay, whatever the news puts on a silver spoon, people just eat it without asking questions. Like, they eat it up, and it's not good. This is why I'm kind of sus on NewsNation. Now, don't get me wrong. I like NewsNation, but why are they allowed to speak? Who are they rubbing shoulders with? Now, Ross speaks glowingly about Lou Elizondo. Now, despite his little chandelier incident, despite his little cornfield incident, still rates him. Now, at the very least, why aren't NewsNation talking about those incidents? And I'm not saying like run a hit piece on Lou Elizondo being a CIA disinfo agent. That's not what I'm saying. But like, why aren't you at least saying, oh, this guy who is, kind of the face of disclosure, for some reason, he keeps getting given pictures of chandeliers and he thinks they're UFOs. That's weird. That's kind of weird. I'm not saying we need to talk about how he's a disinformation agent, but why aren't we talking about the fact that he keeps showing photos of things that aren't actually UFOs? And he seems to apparently believe him. Like, that in itself should be a story from an outlet that covers the UFO topic, but it isn't. Instead, you have people like this coming on, waving around his book, saying that he's getting abducted by a praying mantis. I don't know. this interview came across as very strange to me. And I've talked about John Blitch in a lot of videos, but something about the way he carries himself doesn't feel authentic to me. And I know I'm not alone when I say that. And then, you know, the fact that he's got Lou's book there. I mean, he is not Lou. Who brings someone else's book to an interview to like wave around? I don't know. That's just weird to me. I mean, it's quite clear the narrative and the story that John wants to continue to convey to the camera. And I guess by extension of that, you could say NewsNation as well. So I don't know. Look, a lot of things in this Matthew Brown interview to me just for some reason started raising a lot of questions about NewsNation. Now, I'm not coming on here and saying NewsNation is a disinformation source, but I think like anything in life, we should ask questions and we should be encouraged to ask questions, right? That's healthy. It's healthy to ask questions. You're not a conspiracy theorist if you ask a question. Now, what's interesting as well is the fact that in the interview, going back to Corbell and Matthew Brown now, that they say that they didn't want to admit the drones because they're defenseless, right? They're defenseless against whatever it is. Well, again, to just kind of wind it back to the whole 4chan story, if that is to be believed, it all tracks, right? That these submarines vaporized in an instant. They can't do anything about these drones in the sky. Like it makes sense that they can't do anything about it. And as Matthew Brown said, that's a weakness and they don't want to admit that.
Somebody was flying these things that crashed. Somebody built these things that are being reverse engineered. Who's that somebody? And why don't they come forward? I mean, you may not have seen that in a document or a file or something somewhere, but you've thought about it. You're a smart guy. What are your thoughts on the big picture questions? Who are they? Why are they here? Why don't they show us what's going on?
I think I have a good degree of confidence that the reason they're here is us. I think life, especially sentient life, is a precious thing. And I think to some, it might be a resource. I think humanity to some level is a resource for them.
Like a commodity?
Possibly a commodity, possibly a form of entertainment, possibly medical related.
Think they live here?
Yes.
For all intents and purposes?
Yes.
Always?
I don't know about always, but it certainly appears that they have been here for most of recorded history. At least some element of this has been here for most of human recorded history.
You think we would see them if they didn't let us see them? Even with our more advanced sensors, that they pop up, but they can also disappear. And do they allow us to get these glimpses? Is that a game of some sort, I wonder? Or an education process?
It's a bizarre one that I could not understand if it is a game. I think they're both just as powerful as we think, but also less. And I think there is not a single they here. Certainly multiple factions of the same species, if not multiple species. And all the complexity that brings, which might be our best hope. I have been exposed to no direct information on the anatomy, biology, intentions, culture, politics.
Never came across those files?
Never came across those. I think those are all some of the deepest secrets.
Right. They would be if this is correct information.
Mm-hmm. What I have learned is that we live in a dream, a carefully constructed reality. We make use of a science that is tightly controlled and suppressed and distorted. I think we are left behind.
Humans.
I think normies, the normal humans, the people have been left behind. Us. Mm-hmm. People need to understand that we might have freedom of speech, but that has been subverted. We do not have freedom of inquiry. We are blocked from learning what we need to know. Just in the public world, we are blocked from advancing in science. We're taught false science intentionally to prevent us from learning more. We live in the Matrix. It's just much more boring than the movie.
There's so much in that clip that we can talk about. First of all, the fact that he's saying we are possibly a resource or entertainment, or that this is all like medical related. I mean, that kind of tracks. If when people who talk about having abduction experiences, it always seems like it is a medical related procedure. They're on a table, akin to how you would be when you go into surgery. Whether that medical procedure is to extract or monitor a resource, who knows? The idea of entertainment is probably the most frightening one out of all of them. Like, are these beings that appear like gods to us keeping us in a state of conflict as a means of entertainment? Is it just fun to them to keep us sort of fighting and attacking each other the same way we have like illegal cockfighting? Same kind of thing, obviously on a much grander scale. But I mean, we do it. We do it. We grab some kind of lesser species and make them fight against each other. I mean, not me personally, but it's not like it's out of this realm of possibility. I mean, if we do it, what's to say they don't do it? Now, I've often spoken about on this channel, like, we can't always look at things through a human lens, and that if they are so wildly different to us, we can't sort of put the same human lens on it when we try to dissect what their motives are and things like that. But what I've been thinking recently is the fact that our intelligence and the way that we are as humans, that makes us different to all the other life on this planet, that very thing might be the thing that makes us related to them, if that makes sense. And what I'm kind of talking about there is the idea that, we are all hybrids. And, that's not my theory. That's like Commander Sergeant Robert Dean. A lot of people, with these medical related, resource related, the fact that they may have interbred with us. We are them, or they are among us. They look just like us. So I'm also starting to think that the reason why we are at the top of all the other life on this planet, and why we aren't, the thing that makes us not just another species of chimpanzee or monkey, that element that separates us is them. That's their link inside us. I don't know if I'm explaining that right. Hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. I know what I'm saying, at least. Hopefully I'm conveying that to you as well. But some other things that were mentioned in that clip there was the fact that Matthew Brown believes that, whatever this is, has been here for a long, long time, at least most of recorded history. And again, just to wind it back to the 4chan leak, that is another detail that was in the original 4chan leak, that they said that, they believe that this has been here for a long, long time. And if you don't know the original 4chan leak, I apologize that I keep referencing it. I have said I'll do a read through of it on this channel if there is a overwhelming amount of people that want to hear it, because it is big. It's going to be a long one. It'll probably be like a 2-parter. But, I think it would be cool to have it documented on the channel. He also says that we live in a carefully constructed reality, a dream. I think, this is just my own personal opinion, but I want to go into this a bit more deeper in another video. But I think that dream, that carefully constructed reality, started, at least the modern version of it, started with the Apollo program. I know, controversial. I know that's going to upset some people, but I think that was the ignition to get people on board with the dream without realizing what was going on outside the dream. That's just my opinion. We can talk about that in another video. Controlled science that doesn't lead anywhere. This has been widely spoken about from people like Eric Weinstein. And that normies have been left behind, which is basically the same thing, and the normies that don't get left behind, the normies that maybe begin to discover things that could pull us forward and bring us close to them, a la Amy Eskridge, they don't last very long. Okay, that's a bit of a trend that we've noticed, that these people who come up with these amazing ideas of free energy, things that would break us out of the societal constructs and systems that we're kind of stuck in, they don't generally tend to last very long. So make of that what you will. And the big statement there as well is that he says we live in a matrix. And I think this is becoming clearer each day, that obviously the term matrix is directly linked to the movie, right? I guess that's probably where the word really comes from, and which is clever because it trivializes the concept. And I'm sure that that is by design, right? And I think that's important for people to understand that, you know, it's not a coincidence, in my opinion, that we have movies about humanity being trapped in this false version of reality. And then we have whistleblowers coming out saying that is essentially what is going on. Okay, I don't think that's a coincidence. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we have movies about secret agents in black suits going around protecting the world from an alien species while also making sure that nobody on Earth finds out about it. And then we also have people coming out claiming, after having an encounter, men in black suits have showed up. Coincidence? I don't know. Is it a coincidence that we have a movie about a mothership entering our solar system that then releases a fleet of UFOs upon the world? And it's beginning to seem like that is the story that is seeping out through various channels in this space. And that is its own video that I'm working on. We'll talk about that a little bit more later in the week. Let's jump into the next clip.
Have you gamed it out in your head? What happens next? What will likely be, assuming we go forward with this interview and make it public? And that right now we don't know that that's the case, but when it comes out, if it comes out, what happens to you then? What are the risks?
Well, gaming it out, there's more than me. More will come. I could say more if I wanted to. Hopefully this rises to a level of public attention that demands it be addressed in a serious way. I can't cause that alone. Other people will, but more need to come. And I think at this point, I like to say directly to the members of our military and our intelligence community, the time is now where you must choose whether you honor your oath or your orders. And if you have courage, you already know the answer. But for the rest of you, lead, follower, get out of the way. Get out of the way.
So that clip there, honestly, I don't really feel like I need to add much to that. But I felt like it would be remiss of me to not include it. You know, if there happens to be anyone watching this who that is directed at, then I feel like it needs to be included. Now, I'll include a link to the full podcast below, so you can go and check out the full thing, which I recommend you do. But we just got one more clip, and then we're going to dig into a little bit more of this shadiness that's kind of surrounding a few people in this space.
Promises will help whistleblowers come forward. We'll give them support. There are private equity funds and organizations that say they're going to help, but we haven't seen shit so far, have we? And have you?
No, I've reached out directly to institutions that claim that they are here to help UAP whistleblowers specifically, both in the process of coming forward and any sort of stability afterwards. It's been radio silence. At best, at worst, one of those institutions has stolen my information. There is no organized help for whistleblowers. It is all controlled. It is all at either the special interest of industry that wants to get in on this, or by the existing powers that be.
Intelligence agencies who have infiltrated or created these things.
Correct.
I have directly experienced that, sadly, over this last year, which is the vacuuming up of intelligence on people such as yourself who are trying to do the right thing as whistleblowers, as well as anything that reporters could possibly obtain and release. And it is a treacherous moment in our history of this. You did a call to action to people. You told them this, it's time, move forward. I know that you had some encouragement with David Grush. I hope people are encouraged also by you. Look, man, if you were to die tomorrow because of whatever reason, what do you want people to know right now? Like, what do you want people to know if you're just like fucking gone?
You are not free. And this reality has far more to it than you have been allowed to believe. And God is real.
Again, very powerful words to finish up with there. Now, I want to get into a couple of things, but just something that popped into my head just then, right, is when he says, you know, reality is like there's so much that we're not allowed to know, right? But what we are allowed to know is what is coming out through certain channels of disclosure, right? And I just had a little thought, like, what if, you know, all of these people, like the Elizondos and co, it really is all disinformation, but what's real is like the secret space programs, like the people who are like working with reptilians on the moon. Like, what if that is actually the reality of it? And it's just so wild that like it just shatters people's minds. But that secret space program, super soldiers, 20 and back, that is real. I mean, I don't know, but it's wild to consider that it could be, because you have to ask the question, why is this allowed to come out? If this cover up is so far reaching for so many years, such a stranglehold on information, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange leak out information, they didn't get away with it. They weren't, that wasn't okay. But then you've got other people out and just kind of going on podcasts saying stuff and it's all good, but, you know, tell you in a skiff and all this kind of stuff, but they're all good. So, you know, what is that? What is that? Anyway, in that clip, he talked about how institutions that claim to help whistleblowers essentially just are a scam, that they just vacuum up information and whistleblowers themselves and then control them. And look, he didn't state who he was talking about there, but I'm going to assume, and if anyone feels like this is wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. Be nice about it. I think he's talking about the UAP Disclosure Fund, which, let me just move over here. Let's take a look at this. So first of all, first thing we get on the landing page is a big button to donate, okay? Just in case you want to donate and help the whistleblowers like Matthew Brown, who emailed them and got no response. So that's where your money is going. So if we just go to About Us, this is what they do, apparently. Advancing transparency on unidentified anomalous phenomena. We are a non-partisan, non-profit supporting UAP legislation, protecting whistleblowers, and raising public awareness for greater transparency. Now, again, I don't know if this is who Matthew Brown is referring to, but it certainly sounds like it, and apparently it doesn't do what it says on the tin. And interestingly enough, the UAP Disclosure Fund was, I think, headed up originally by Lou Elizondo and Matt Ford and Gary Nolan, who, as well as others, here we go, you've got Chris Mellon still involved. I think he's actually the head of it now. And Tim Gallaudet, Harvey Loeb, Kirk McConnell. So there's a lot of players in this, but notably, the three that I've just mentioned are gone. Okay, Lou Elizondo, Matt Ford, Gary Nolan are gone. Now, it's not clear if that's related to the whole cornfield incident. It only came like days after. But what's interesting is that David Grush, who spoke to NewsNation and Ross Coulthart, told Matthew Brown to go to Corbell, not Ross and NewsNation, who he went to, but Lou Elizondo is pretty tightly associated with Ross Coulthart and the like. And now they've been pushed or left, I guess we can only speculate, from the UAP Disclosure Fund, who Matthew Brown also says is a scam, essentially, that they took his details and never got back to him. Meanwhile, they have a button here where me, you, and anyone can go and donate our own money to a place where we think is helping these UAP whistleblowers. And then Matthew Brown is telling us that he basically just got ghosted. Now, again, I'm assuming this is who he's talking about, but I think, even if I'm wrong, it's probably a fair assumption at least. And, this isn't new, by the way. We can get rid of this now. This isn't new, by the way. Like, MUFON originally was this, right? This is literally what MUFON did to Chris Bledsoe. When he reported what he saw for the first time, he ended up with men in suits at his house, okay? Because of what he reported to MUFON. So I think it's important to recognize that, this isn't new. This isn't some wild part of thing that we haven't seen before. Speaking of that, I've been watching the X-Files lately. For the first time, actually. And what plays out in that show, it's like we're getting a rerun in real time, but through podcasts and all of these people. I don't know. We can talk about that in another video. I think it's becoming clear who the authentic people are in this space, but still, continue to observe before making full judgment. Take care, be good, get outside, touch grass.
People are going to say, what
I'll see you next time.
is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light. In our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.